So yesterday was the 23rd anniversary of September 11th, and for reasons that escape me, Donald Trump was allowed to be at the ceremony at Ground Zero. He brought with him Laura Loomer, who is one of the most vile, bigoted uh, people ever to live. He also brought her to the debate in Philadelphia, and then after the services, Donald went around signing American flags. During the debate on Tuesday night, Vice President Kamala Harris did a masterful job of reminding everybody what a disgraceful human being Donald Trump is, how unfit to lead this country he is. But let's be very clear about this. He himself reminds us of that every single day. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episodes of the Nerd Avengers. It's great to have you with us. Jen Taub, Jen Rubin, Brian Karam. It's awesome to see you guys again. It's been so long. Um, Actually, I need to thank you. Tuesday, from the nerds through our debate coverage, was just an amazing and very long day. I started at like 4:30 in the morning to be on Morning Joe, and then the debate coverage. I think we went until 12:45 Wednesday morning. But it was worth it. So setting it up with you guys, watching it, analyzing it, was a real it was actually a pleasure. I have to say, finally. So and thanks to everybody who watched. We had over 10,000 people watching the show at one point. So that was also really cool. And I am going to have to duck out early today because my new book was released on Tuesday. And yeah, it's really exciting. And it's not like that's the end of it. It's sort of the beginning of the end of it. So there's lots of media. I'm going to be at the 92nd Street Y in New York City today, which is kind of the coolest thing. Maybe not the coolest thing, but it's an incredibly cool thing. I think that's at 8 o'clock. And media hits, et cetera, et cetera. So it is going to be a busy couple of weeks. But I will be leaving you in the best of hands. So I wanted to, as I said, thank everybody for joining us basically all day Tuesday. And secondly, for helping make my new book #1 in Amazon in new releases, which is, everybody here has written books. So, like the trepidation that comes with that. I did not look at the numbers yesterday because I looked at them once on Wednesday and it was Tuesday, and it was like, oh, that's okay. So it's like out of our hands, right? But so it's very gratifying, and I'm grateful, and hope that if you haven't picked it up, you will. My goal, one of my goals for this book, is to kind of help everybody make sense of the trauma we've all been experiencing these last many years. So that is why I came in today, before I run off to my next appointment. But just really quickly, Brian, Jen, and Jen, I wanted to get your highlight from Tuesday night, because there were so many to choose from. I called it an embarrassment of riches. So, Jen Rubin, I want to start with you because we didn't see you Tuesday night. I know you had a lot on your plate. So would love to know what your highlight was. You're muted. Hold on a sec. Hang on. I don't know why you're muted, but we will get you
Here we go.
unmuted. There you go.
First of all, thank you for writing this book, Mary. I think it's such an important book for the country, for people who grew up in toxic families. It is such a courageous, such an honest book. Thank you. I am sure it was not easy at times, but thank you for doing it. My favorite moment, I think, was when she said, 81 million people fired you and you're having trouble processing it. In that one statement, she conveyed he's a loser, he's psychotic, he's a baby, and we all know it. And Nancy Pelosi said something subsequent to the debate that he's like a giant balloon, that if you hit it with a pin, it flies around the room and lands in nothing. And that was kind of my moment.
Yeah, and it's such a great image too. And by putting it the way she did, look, as you guys know, I'm always for being as direct as possible with Donald. He's a loser, he's a child, all that other stuff. However, sometimes it's better to go at it a little more obliquely. And by putting it in terms that he really understands, because this is after bragging about the fact that he got more votes than anybody else in the White House ever had. It's like, well, that doesn't really matter if
The other guy got
1
more.
million people voted for the other guy, so it was, yeah, it was, the whole thing was masterful, but that was one of the top, I think, 3 moments for sure. Brian, what was your highlight?
Well, damn, that was mine. I loved it for the fact that
We can share.
she called into question his mental acuity in such a great fashion that it was subtle, understated, and yet at the same time it had the effect of the pinprick. The wonderful part about him getting 75 million votes, I immediately thought of the Jerry Seinfeld line, congratulations. Out of all the losers, you're the best. You came in tops. You were the top loser of all time. You got the most votes of all the losers on the planet. So exactly. I immediately went to Seinfeld. But other than that, I think the key moment was, and I think the one when he referenced, how things didn't go well for him in Midwest with abortion, when she pointed out that no matter what your beliefs, no matter what your religious feelings are, you don't have to understate or change your deep-seated beliefs to understand that, you have a right to make decisions about your own body. And you certainly don't want the government or Donald Trump specifically making those decisions. Man, I think that it touched the nerve with a lot of people I was watching with, and I believe it touched the nerve with a lot of Republicans. But then again, you can't forget the moment where she stood and said, this former president. And you knew damn well that wasn't what she was thinking. I mean, we had the watch party at my house, and there were people who were on the floor laughing. So I think those were but my takeaway, when she called his mental acuity into question, his ability to be cognitive, the fact that he still is processing, that the word that she used, processing that loss. It's a term used by psychiatrists and psychologists, and it just lets you know the man's batshit nuts. So yeah. I love you, Jen. That's you nailed it.
I cannot disagree. I think we have that clip. If we do, it would be fun to see, wouldn't it? Again, I mean, I could just watch that debate over and over and over. I could just watch her facial expression.
We do have it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's
yes.
play it.
He was having I think it's when she said he was having a difficult time processing.
Process it. Yes,
That's the one.
Yes,
that would be it.
that's the one.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's
And
be
look at his
clear
face.
about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
Just you know, the combination of pity, contempt, condescension. I mean, it's just
That was a
all
prosecutor, Mary. That was
right.
The, I,
Oh man, and I'm like, yeah, like
look him right in the face when she went after him. Then she turned to the audience as if we were the jury and
Yeah.
made the plea. I thought that was just that. I've seen a lot of prosecutors in court. Man, she nailed it. Like I said, be wary of the prosecutor who comes into court smiling. She nailed his ass.
But there was another dimension to it as well, and it was that you poor thing. You know, you're having a really hard time.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
Bless his heart.
Anyway, Jen Taub, your favorite, your highlight of the many.
So I have described this as being my favorite, but this will be the first time I've ever said these words out loud because it just came through to me. My favorite moment was when, toward the very beginning, when she invited people to come to the rally, because that's when she struck the decisive blow. And here's my analogy. Have you ever been to a kid's birthday party and people go up to bat at the piñata, and a lot of them miss? Over all these years, people have gone up to bat at Donald Trump, the giant orange piñata. And with that, when she said people leave your rallies because they're kind of bored, when she struck him with that, she broke open the piñata and the candy started falling out. And to me, you know, everything after that is fine, but that was the moment.
Well, yeah, she beat the stuffing out of him. And as you say, with one blow, she set the tone with a handshake, but with that comment about the rally, she made it impossible for him to recover. He never did, and he never will. Let's be very clear here if we're going to speak in psychological terms. She inflicted a narcissistic injury so deep, he will be reliving that moment forever. That's how fragile this guy is. And it mystified. I mean, credit where credit is due. She did it brilliantly. But it's still mystifying to me that nobody else ever has. That's all it took was somebody to go toe to toe with him and tell him the truth about himself. So I don't have a specific moment. It's more just the overarching way in which he handled this. 8 years ago, Hillary. Oh, you know what? Let's play the rally clip first, and then I'll babble for a minute or two, and then I'll leave you all. Okay, here we go.
Fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter, he will talk about. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice
It's the
President
next
Harris,
part
thank you.
that-
President Trump, on that
You
point,
know,
I want to get your
it-
Well, I
response.
would
Wait,
like to
this is
respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try
Okay, can we
kill
cut
that
it here?
bit?
Because I
No,
don't.
no. Oh,
Why?
sorry.
Yeah.
That's
don't-
the next part is the part I love, but go ahead.
Oh, well,
It's when he breaks. But
That's
you know,
all right.
we don't have to listen to it. We can play it later
No,
when
I
you're
don't-
gone, Mary. It's fine.
well, also, we know he breaks, and basically, we already saw it. Okay, so she's saying Hannibal Lecter, she's saying windmills cause cancer, and he's like, he's like, why is she concredit that? Those are true things, right? And then she says the part about people being bored, and he's like, wait a minute. So he finally catches up with her. So 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton told us very clearly and succinctly who Donald Trump was. You cannot give power to a man who can be baited with a tweet. I mean, that should have been it, because that was true. What Kamala Harris did is demonstrate it. That's what's been missing. So, hallelujah. All right, I need to jump. So,
Love you,
the
Mary.
show will be in Jen Tab's capable hands. And Jen Rubin, Brian Karam, awesome to see you. I will see you soon. I'm going to go sell some books. No, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if that's the case. If it's up to me, that would be a bad sign. But anyway, have fun. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you all. I don't know what the day is. I'll see you soon. Bye. If I can figure out how to.
So, yeah, it's still Thursday all the day long. And do you mind if we just play what happens, Mercedes, right after when the moderator, David Muir, tries to get Donald?
So that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light.
Actually, that's
so
projection.
she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
Look
we
at
have
her
the biggest
face.
rallies, the most incredible rallies
biggest
in the
rally,
history of
the best
politics.
rally.
That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Okay,
I
go
thought it
ahead,
was
go
hell.
with it, Brian.
Yeah, look, man, all I can tell you is, man, when you're full of shit that bad that you got to make up dog eating, I have moderated, I think I tweeted this out, I have moderated dozens, and I mean dozens of campaign debates, from local to state to congressional and Senate races. And in all of those years, 40 odd years of doing this, not once have I ever had to fact correct someone on claiming that people were eating dogs.
Well, I'm glad, Brian, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in fact, some of this information got to Donald Trump from J.D. Vance, even though apparently, as Donald told all of us, he doesn't speak with J.D. And as you may have seen, I don't know if you saw this, Jen, J.D. kind of came out and said, well,
backed off from it.
Well, kind of did, but he said he kind of stands by it, and then he pivoted to, well, maybe. By the way, the Haitians who are immigrated into the U.S. and are living in Ohio, he came here legally, first of all, and which isn't to say we should lie about people who are undocumented, but they're wrong. They came here legally. A lot of them are employed. Again, you should be respected even if you're not. But it's ridiculous what he is doing to demonize them. But so then JD pivots. I think you probably saw this, to say, well, it's not that, it's the Hondurans, and they're killing, running down kids in the street, and without even asking permission of these parents, starts to use a child who died, in a car accident, not deliberate, from someone who was, I think, an undocumented person. And it's tragic. And I don't, Jen, did you see this? Because we have a clip of the parents begging J.D. Vance to stop mentioning their son. Let's go ahead and play that, and then I'm going to have Jen comment on the other side.
Donald Trump. They have spoken my son's name and used his death political gain. I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. But if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone. The last thing that we need is to have the worst day of our lives violently and constantly shoved in our faces. But even that's not good enough for them. They take it one step further. They make it seem as though our wonderful Aiden appreciates your hate, that we should follow their hate. And look what you've done to us. We have to get up here and beg them to stop. Using Aiden as a political tool is, to say the least, reprehensible for any political purpose. And speaking of morally bankrupt, politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump, they have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. To clear the air, my son, Aiden Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti. This tragedy is felt all over this community, the state, and even the nation. But don't spin this towards hate.
That knocked the wind out of me. Jen, can you comment?
It just shows how cruel these people are. There's nothing they won't say or do to benefit themselves. They would willingly sick bigots on legally present Haitians. They would willingly create this furor around a family that is experiencing the worst possible moment of their lives because they don't care. They are cruel. They are sociopaths. They use people only insofar as it benefits them. And I think what was so interesting about Harris's response was she didn't respond with anger and indignation, which would have been appropriate. How dare you attack a group of immigrants using what amounts to almost like a blood libel against a group of people? She laughed at him and she said, "You're just a ridiculous human being." And that's what he deserved. She said something during her speech at the convention. He's an unserious person, but electing him has very serious consequences. And I think that's the perfect response. Right. He is a ridiculous, offensive, despicable human being. And yes, he's laughable. And yes, he's weird. But shame on everyone else if they vote for this guy, because you have no excuse now. You know what a nut he is. You can't pretend, as the mainstream media has, that he's been making arguments, that he's been giving speeches, that he's been presenting an alternative view of America. That's crap. He's been doing this crazy shit all over the country for years now. And the media keeps framing and reframing and normalizing. And so what the debate did was it was an antidote to the complete media failure that we've had on both sides. Both the failure to cover him as who he is, how psychotic, how sick, how dangerous he is, and also this notion that somehow she's inarticulate or inept or weak or doesn't know what she's doing. Because we've had such a media failure and because we never had a primary for either one of them in which they could have showed something to their respective bases and to the country at large. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't the president. He obviously ducked the debates. This was like the big reveal. This was the emperor has no clothes. And you know who's been pretending that he has? It's been the media. And in some ways, the biggest loser in all of this, and I will have a column on this on Sunday, is not only Donald Trump, not only the loathsome pundits who keep defending him, but the media in general, who has pretended that this is some like normal person. And suddenly this guy gets on the stage, and I can understand a person who is not like us, totally invested in the news, who says, like, why wasn't I told this before? Why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I heard about this? Now you can say, oh, well, it was out there. You should have known it. You should have been watching, Nerd Avengers and reading Jennifer Rubin and Brian and Jen. But most people don't. And it has been such a despicable effort to enable him and cover up what's been going on that this was really the big reveal. And imagine what would have happened had he not shown up to either one of these two debates.
Mm-hmm.
He would have had a potential train wreck.
Now, I hear, Jen, I love what you said, and but I'm legally obligated to ask Brian to speak now, because when you say media failure, that just like immediately lights up all of his synapses of his brain. Now, Brian, Jennifer talked about the media failure leading into this debate and how it was, an antidote to that. What about the moderators? How do you rate them, Brian?
Well, let me comment first on the first comment. You're not going to find me disagreeing too much with Jennifer about how we've carried ourselves as members of the press during the last 6 years. I would only say don't throw all of us into that tub, because some of us have tried very hard over the last 6 years, and I had to fight, and Jim Acosta had to fight to keep our press passes. We were threatened on many occasions by members of the Trump administration. There are those of us who have struggled mightily. The problem, of course, is when you have large media companies who make bank off of Donald Trump, our voices are then drowned out by the vast majority of people that they will put out there to make sure that they normalize them so they can continue making money. And to that extent, you are absolutely right. It's inexcusable that we've been doing that for the last 6 years. What's more inexcusable is those of us who have been telling the truth for the last 6 years have been minimized by those of in our media who don't want to tell the truth. That to me is personally very. It's not that my synapses fire. It's that, like, folks, some of us have tried. If you want to get angry at the people who have been minimizing our voices. Jim Acosta should have a much larger stage on which to speak. Was he present during the CNN? He should have been the one moderating that debate. He knows Donald Trump better than anybody at CNN. Was he there? No. Were the people was Caitlin Collins there, who also went after him on occasion? Was she there? No. CNN, their moderators were horrible. It was the worst moderated debate I've ever seen in 40 some odd years. At ABC, I'm going to give them some credit for their moderation, because I know that Democrats were angry because they think that Donald Trump had more time, and he did. He had about 5 more minutes speaking time. They went over 11 different categories and topics, and he did have more time than Kamala Harris did in speaking. However, they also fact-checked him in real time. And in fact, they're the ones that called me, nobody's been eating dogs, pal. That was, that was out there. And Lindsay was very good at getting him to shut up on a couple of occasions. She goes, time's over, we're moving on. So they did what a moderator should do. Did they do it as well as I would have done? Of course not. The weak part of that was when they said, you said, Mr. Trump, that you did make the phone call to make sure that legislation on immigration wasn't passed. Why did you do that? And then he went off track somewhere else, and they never got the train back on the track and forced him to answer that question. But those are nitpicky problems. At least they were doing the right thing. And I know there were people that complained on his side that they fact checked him too much. Well, no, he just lied too much. That's just another way of admitting that he did a lot more lying than she did, because they had to fact check him. What the Republicans wanted, what MAGA wanted, was to him to lie indiscriminately and get away with it. So I give them points on that. I think they were, and they also asked the one question that I wanted to ask after the first debate that Biden didn't ask and none of the moderators asked.
When he said,
hey, if I'm elected, this is Trump, if I'm elected between the election day and inauguration day, I'll end the war in Ukraine. One word. How? They asked it. They had to go back to the last debate to get him to that point, but thank God someone did it. I've been asking that question. How? And they held him accountable for, you've had 9 years. You've had 9 years for a health plan to come up with something against Obama. What do you got? And he said, well, I have he sounded like George Costanza. I've got the concept of a plan. I mean, give me a break.
I mean, come on. That's like an instant classic. I still use the word, the phrase, who's the decider? Because that's such a great word. And I mean that the best thing, instead of the check is in the mail, I have the concept of a plan. That's
of a plan. Well, I've got a concept of, peace in the Middle East. I've got concepts of being richer beyond avarice. What's the reality? And when he sat there and said, look, if I were the president, this wouldn't have happened. She called him, and Jen Rubin, you said earlier, it's like, yeah, you'd have given up. I love that. But the fact of the matter is that's another point where I would have liked to have seen, let's talk reality. What are you going to do? Now, you can say what would have happened all you wanted. But the fact that they tried to hold him accountable was to me, one of the reasons that this debate was a better debate, because the moderators played a much more decisive role in moderating the debate.
I love that. And I want to pivot from that, because when you mentioned specifically Ukraine, one thing that I thought showed her skill is that she was prepared for saying he would have abandoned them. And then she knew exactly how many Polish Americans lived in Pennsylvania, because we know where Poland is geographically and what happens as Putin expands his imperial ambitions to expand his territory. And, I am sure there were other pieces of data in her back pocket, so to speak, that she didn't even bring out. And I thought that was masterful. Jen, I want to ask you, I know we talked about some of our favorite moments for Harris. Is there, you don't have to have a favorite. Are there any other things specifically how she did on the question of abortion, or how he did on one of the most important questions, which is peaceful transfer of power? Thoughts on that?
Well, I guess my other favorite moment wasn't something that she did. It was when he said Abdul runs the Taliban.
Oh my God. Instant meme. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What was that, Jen? Why did he say
I'm
that?
not a racist. No, not me.
Well, who's Abdul?
Abdul? I want, like OJ Simpson, I want to be on the search for Abdul. I think we should send out a search party for Abdul.
Oh, they found him on Twitter. Some guy named Abdul was like, he's very funny. Yeah, you've seen that.
I saw it. It was hysterical. I mean, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
Because everything that comes out of his mouth is insane junk. And when we say that he was fact-checked, it was like 4 times. And there were zillions of lies, everything from tariffs to how much oil we're producing to the number of immigrants coming over the border to every imaginable fact you can come up with.
Right.
I bet if you took each sentence, there's not a single sentence that didn't have a lie, an exaggeration, or a racist slur in it. That's how it is. And people got to see that. So I think part of what I enjoyed so much was her reaction to his insanity, and finally kind of expressing what everyone who is normal thinks when he says these things, which are, essentially this. So I did think, I'm glad you raised it, on the abortion issue, she just hit it out of the park. It was so empathetic as he starts down this nonsense role that everyone wanted to do this and refusing to say whether he would sign a national abortion ban. She just nailed him. And
Jen, we have that clip. Do you want me to play it and then we can talk about it? Okay. I mean, Mercedes, can you play that? I think I lost Mercedes for a second. I know we have the clip. Oh, her mouse is messing up. Well, that's they're eating mice in Chicago, apparently. I think I can find it. Here we go.
Courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam
That's
Vice President, I want to get your response to President
Beautiful.
Trump.
Well, as I said,
Beautiful.
you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted?
This is
Pregnant
brilliant.
women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But
Perfect. I don't know how she could have said it any more articulately, any more specifically. And you could see when he's kind of trapped, he refuses to look at her.
That's
it's
right.
kind of like sleeping in court. I'm not hearing this. I'm not hearing this. I'm not paying attention. I'm just going to stare ahead. Because he has no response and he doesn't think these things through, and he doesn't care if women are bleeding out. That, again, he's a sociopath. All he cares about is saying whatever it will take to give him power. So these people who are dying and complaining, they don't exist for him. He doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck by each time I hear that, both how she performed and how he reacted. I mean, so much of what you see in her rhetorical skill there is that some of what she's saying, she wants to hit those points, but she is speaking in part extemporaneously and using that repetitive language. They didn't want that, picking up on the exact word and phrase that he used. And we all know that that is incredibly effective because it's a way of saying, you asshole, you're saying we wanted this? And what I love that she did is she avoided getting into the legal weeds. I might have taken the bait as a law professor saying, no, most law professors didn't think it should have been left to the states, and gotten really into the stuff that goes to the constitutional issues and separations of power and blah, blah, blah. That's not what people want to hear. They want to hear the impact. The so-called, they say, well, we left it to the states. Well, no, these are Trump abortion bans in the states because you appointed these Supreme Court justices and people are bleeding out in parking lots. They're not able to have the children they want because of IVF. That is the way to speak. And I was just amazed. And Brian,
remember what this debate was. It's not going to move the needle. Well, it may move the needle for Trump hardcore supporters. Look, he constantly polls between 42 and 44%. If in the next 2 weeks it drops below 42%, you'll see real movement, and that's a real panic among the Trump crowd. But this particular debate, were for those people who, for whatever reason, are still sitting on the bench. And so her what I marveled at, and what Jen Rubin said that I loved, is that it was a calculate. You couldn't have said it any more pithy than what she did, because she's appealing to those people that still haven't decided how to vote. And it was a very humanistic way to appeal to those particular voters. Interestingly enough, I think the Republicans, curiously, find themselves in the same position the Democrats were in following the last debate. Trump is old, out of touch, delusional. And when when Harris mentioned it, he's having a hard time processing the fact that he lost. That was a talk, again, to the mental capacity of the man. You could see as she's talking about abortion, his eyes glazed over. Like you said, it was like he's asleep in court. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And the fact of the matter is I think she scored points where she had to score points. And this debate was important for that reason alone. The hardcore supporters on both sides are not going to change their mind based on this debate. But there are some people that are, the former Republicans, and you had like Joe Walsh up in New Hampshire this week saying, look, if you want to get the Republican Party back the way it was, you got to get rid of Donald Trump. He was on a phone call again with 70,000 Republicans, not 70, not 17. Him and Adam Kinzinger were on a phone call with 70,000 Republicans to try and make sure that Donald Trump does not get back in office. And how she addressed the abortion issue in that debate. Look, after she got done talking, I was saying, send in the medical examiner and check for vitals because Donald Trump's dead. That was the end of his. If you're listening at all, he dabbles in the devious, the lights, and the disingenuous, hopes to destroy with deception, but being decrepit and a demonically driven demagogue, he's only been successful in duplicity with those who cannot differentiate between fact and fiction. And she pointed that out. That was what she did so damn well in that debate, was to point out exactly why Donald Trump can never set foot in that office again. She didn't have to dabble into law, Jen. She had to just tell people flat out what it's all about. And when she did it with humor and pathos and charm, she won the night.
Now, speaking of, I just want to jump in real quick. Speaking of winning the night, here we are. We know what each other thinks. We read each other's work. But I want to share with you what's going on in the world of TikTok. Just how
unfortunately I'm in that world too.
I know, so is Jen, so am I. But let's go. Mercedes, can you play that fabulous TikTok clip that you found?
This clip of Kamala from last night. This is at the debate watch party that I was at. I was lucky enough to be invited. But this man in the audience said exactly what probably all of America was thinking at that point. And I just need you to see the way that Kamala reacted to it. It's so funny. It's so funny.
We all know that tonight was a night that highlights something that you all have been working so hard on. We have folks here. You kicked his ass!
I just want to know what her and Doug talk about, especially after the debate. I want to know exactly what she said to Doug about Donald Trump, but I guess we'll never know.
And the reason why I wanted to share that is because, we in some ways are speaking to the choir, right? And, there are many denominations out there, right? We have all of them coming together in this sort of unified way, reacting that Donald Trump lost this debate. And, someone shouted, "You kicked his ass." And she laughed, because that is actually what happened. And even Donald knows this. And I know this because Brian was talking about this on Tuesday night. His team knows Donald did something that no one ever does as a candidate. He went into the spin room himself and desperate. If you've won, you leave the field, you go home, you put your feet up, and you scroll through your Twitter watching the numbers roll in, how great you did. And he knows it sucked. And we know that it did because the next morning, I want to play you guys this and get your thoughts. He called in, as you know, to Fox and Friends. And let's just play it, and then you guys Jen, you can comment.
Felt that you won the debate last night, your best ever. I think before the debate happened last night, the Kamala Harris people said that they would actually like to do another debate in October. And I know that last night Fox News sent letters to your campaign and her campaign, offering 3 dates of debates moderated by Martha and Brett. One is October 9th in Arizona.
Well, I wouldn't want to have Martha and Brett. I'd love to have somebody else other than Martha and Brett. I'd love to have, frankly, Sean or Jesse or Laura. Somebody else. Let's give other people a shot.
Somebody who loves
I didn't think Martha and Brett were good last night.
well,
I thought
here-
Jesse was fantastic last night. What he said.
If they
Jesse
love me, I want
really
them.
got it. Jesse said Trump won that debate. We won that debate by a lot. No, I wouldn't want Martha involved.
Okay,
I would.
Mr.
Yeah, because those Fox people are just such tough nuts to crack. I mean, my God. Why don't we have Eric, moderate the next debate? That's how pathetic this guy is. I want to say something, though, about the effect on the audience.
Yeah.
There's another group of people that she can reach and that Trump can reach. And that is the disgusted Republicans who just say, oh, the hell with it, I'm staying home. And that's what Republicans should be worried sick about it. Because if those people start saying staying home, then all those down ballot Republicans are cooked. And as much as I think that it's a crappy excuse for any public official not to actually endorse Kamala Harris the way the Cheneys did, it's disgraceful that George Bush is silent, it's disgraceful that a lot of other people are silent. If you get a substantial number of people to say, okay, I admit it, he's disgusting, I can't vote for him. And those are really core Republicans, not Democrats who, may not like, or independents, but really Republicans who Republicans depend upon to not only elect the president, but governors, senators, all the way down the ticket. Then those people are cooked. So it was really interesting. She said this one line, and I thought it was just perfect. She said, if you're somebody for whom January 6th was a bridge too far, you've got a place in that campaign. In other words, if there are things about Trump that you simply cannot stomach, even if you don't like me, that's okay. And that's another permission structure to give people who are Republicans who, for whatever misguided reason, think, she's too liberal or whatever it is, they can't bring themselves. Okay, if you really can't bring yourselves, just stay home. Just fucking stay home. And those people are important too. On the other side, what Harris is doing is juicing her base, because at this point, 8 weeks out, it's turn out. I don't think there's any Democrat watching that who wouldn't be more engaged, more excited, more proud, and be willing to go out and to volunteer. That's why they raised $9 million during the debate. That's not big donors. That's young people. That's average people making small dollar donations because they're jazzed. So yes, it's this slim group of kind of semi-informed, non-informed people who are on the fence. And by the way, they don't need more details. This notion that, I'm voting for Trump because I haven't gotten enough details about her housing plan. There's not a single human being who thinks that way. But be that as it may, there are people who are so low information. This may be the first time they ever watched anything regarding the debate. 60 plus million people turned in. So those people would be effective. And you're talking about suppressing, discouraging the Republicans from going out, and you're talking about increasing the excitement, enthusiasm, turnout among Democrats. And you see that in the numbers. Gallup has a 14% enthusiasm advantage over Donald Trump now. That's huge.
So we only got about 10 minutes, and I want to make sure we get to Mary's book at the end, but we're talking about people who haven't voted before. And I think we now really need to talk about the Taylor Swift phenomenon and what you think that's going to mean, not just for registering voters, but for actually getting voters, not just Swifties, but their parents and others, to maybe support Kamala Harris.
We admire Taylor Swift's music, but I don't think most Americans, whether they like her music or fans of hers or not, are going to be influenced by a billionaire celebrity who I think is fundamentally disconnected from the interests and the problems of most Americans.
Jen?
He's such a fucking moron. My God, what a moron. Yeah, we really shouldn't pay attention to billionaire celebrities. My God.
We shouldn't, but that's Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's, no kidding. Yeah. Listen, 300,000 people apparently got referred to their registration from her site. So
it's up to
300,000 people.
Wow. It's up to 420, yeah.
How much is it?
I think it's up to 420 is what I read before we
Okay,
got on the
great.
line.
So that's 420,000 people who weren't registered before.
So, Jen, is that how many showed up on the main page or clicked through to their regular Secretary of States? Do we know?
I think that is people who they could trace going from whatever website she gave them to their Secretary of State. That's correct. So that doesn't count people who just said, oh, that's a good idea, and went directly to their Secretary of State. But I would encourage people to follow Tom Bonnier and Simon Rosenberg, who basically track registration numbers. And someone at the Post also did that. And there was a registration peak when he was talking about January 6th and not taking any responsibility. I don't think that was enthusiastic Trump people doing that. I think that was other people saying,
yes,
oh, that's horrible.
Yes.
So if you look at part of the problem with polling is the electorate is not static. It moves. And you have to look at the increase in young people, African Americans, women who have registered since she became the candidate. It's not the same electorate that would have voted before. And that's also important.
So I just want to quick get back to Taylor Swift, Jen, because I want to mention, and then I've got a clip. I think you may have heard how disgusting Elon is, referencing how he would impregnate Taylor because, she signed off on her endorsement on Instagram as childless cat lady. So I have a clip I want to show you. And this is from, you'll recognize this guy, Rubin, as somebody who was taking money from Tenet, the Russian-backed, newly launched internet company that was paying people like him and Tim Pool $100,000 per video. Nice work if you have no soul. Let me play this.
Let's talk a little bit about how this fits into the pop culture part of this, because pop culture is a huge driver of the cultural narrative. Well, here's the tweet from Colin Rugg about the Taylor Swift thing, and we'll get back to it in a second. So as we referenced before, Taylor Swift endorses Kamala Harris on Instagram after the debate on ABC, proudly calls herself a childless cat lady. Elon Musk, who they hate, he saw that, and he wrote this: "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life." So he's mocking, he's exposing the ridiculousness, right?
Really?
It's like,
That's what he's
Taylor
doing?
Swift,
No,
you are a
it's kinda
young,
rapey.
pretty girl. Do you know what the gang members from Venezuela do to young, pretty girls? It ain't pretty. So what do we have to do? We just keep.
Why do we? Here's my question as a man. This is representation of manhood. Give me a break. I am so sick of these moron grade B human beings. And you talk about toxic masculinity. These are beta males who never, were always picked last for kickball in high school, and now are taking it out on the world because they couldn't get a date with people like Taylor Swift. I'm just done with them. It angers me on a level that I can't even fully describe, because it's so anti what I was brought up. It's so anti-humanity. It's so anti-masculinity. It's merely the fact that you are insecure, arrogant, and you have banded together in little groups of insecure, arrogant people like the Nazis, and are trying to put it on everyone else who are merely trying to get through their life, trying to lead a life that's good and clean. And this guy,
So I know when I saw that, I thought, so I think it's to some degree speaks for itself. I went over it a little bit on my show this morning, but this is now time to, I guess I would pivot by saying, how do people get this way? And I think Mary Trump has a lot of insight. I want to share with you guys. Maybe you can pull this up, Mercedes, either at least part of or most of the interview she had with Morning Joe on Tuesday morning.
Who said this? That was actually from my first piece of hate mail, which I got when I was in 5th grade. Some anonymous parent had their child write a letter to my mom about what an awful person I was. And I don't know who wrote it. I don't know what the motivation was. And why did you make it the title of the book? Because that's sort of how I grew up. I grew up feeling that I was not lovable, that I was not worthy of my place in the world. And pretty much like everybody else in my family, although I didn't know it at the time, I felt I had to justify find ways to justify my existence. But unfortunately, all of us were doing it to people who didn't care.
Yes, and that was also, of course, Donald, this very, very toxic family.
Yes, his father was toxic. He was toxic. Although they weren't physically abusive, we know that abuse runs in families because it's what they were taught. And it's also clear that her mother was a psycho. And the destruction, the casual cruelty, the offhand remark that, his nephew should be essentially put to death because of a physical disability. All of this kind of stuff is just so grotesque and so revealing of who he is. And that's why the press has totally, again, missed the boat. That's what matters. It doesn't matter what her housing policy is. It matters that there's a psychopath running for president.
That's right.
Wake the fuck up, people. Get on board. Start employing some psychiatrists and psychologists to explain this to the American people.
That should be your tagline. Wake the fuck up, people.
Yeah, no kidding.
I got one for you from a reporter friend of mine going down to the White House today.
Yeah.
All I can say is how much I miss reporters who were capable of sardonic humor and independent thought. These people today are robots who just look at Twitter all day. That's the problem we have with some of the reporters. And what really frightens me about all of this is Donald Trump is merely a symptom. He's a symptom of a far greater problem that we have to solve. And that isn't going to be solved by who sits in the White House. It's going to be solved by all of us. We all created it. We all got to solve it. It starts with education. And to Mary's point, I mean, I can't tell you the number of people I've coached in football whose parents had a toxic relationship with their parents. They had a toxic home life. That's what led to that school shooting in Georgia, a horrible toxic home life.
Yes.
This isn't something that you clean up by electing someone to office. This is something we all have to take responsibility for and something that we all have to be engaged in. And if we are willing to place our lives in the hands of people like Donald Trump, or even, God forbid, a religion, and take your responsibility away from what you're supposed to do on any given day, there's very little hope for us if we don't step up to the plate.
I want to ask each of you as we wrap up to end on a hopeful note, which is so unlike us. No, because seriously,
I love hope.
I know your hope. I know your love for your grandchildren, especially the indelibly happy. What do you call him? There's a tagline.
The eternally happy grandson. He's 5 years old and is eternal. He walks up to everybody he meets and says, "Hi, friend." All the kids that he meets are friend. "Hi, friend." And he walks up to all adults with a smile on his face. He takes everything in life as if it's something to be experienced and enjoyed. And man, can you learn? I don't like that idea that children are your heroes. I'm a parent first, but I do love that enthusiasm.
But it's not just him, right? Because if he were raised in a different family, that behavior wouldn't be acceptable, and he would be treated like it's shameful to be that way. You can imagine someone raising someone that way, and this is that kind of damage. Hurts people, and then they hurt people. Jen, what's your happy note?
Well, let me just do a little unhappy note, and then I'll get to the happy note. I have a piece
I love
out.
you, Jen. Here's my happy note. I love you.
Yeah, tomorrow. There's a new survey out from the folks at PRRI who do phenomenal work on Christian nationalism. And what they looked at was authoritarian personalities, Christian nationalism, and Trump supporters. And there is a complete overlap. About 40% of our country, our fellow Americans, fall into that basket, meaning they want a strong man, they like cruelty, they want someone to deal with people who they consider to be their opponents or their rivals. That's the bad news. The good news is yesterday, of course, was the anniversary of 9/11. And I watched for the first time, I don't know how I had never seen it before, a 10-minute video narrated by Tom Hanks. And it was about the armada of boats that essentially rescued people off of Manhattan after the towers, or while the towers were coming down. It was larger than Dunkirk. Dunkirk rescued about 300,000 British and French soldiers over 9 days. This rescued 500,000 soldiers over 9 hours. And they talked to tugboat operators. Certainly there were Coast Guard, ferry operators. Basically, the call went out and hundreds of boats responded. I'm getting, again, goosebumps just saying about it. There is a core decency that still exists in Americans, that if we appeal to the better angels of their nature, that they will respond. It was an act of not only generosity, but bravery. They didn't know if New York was going to be bombed again. They didn't know if the people coming onto the boats were terrorists. As one guy said, I had to do something. What was I going to tell my kids? That I didn't do something? That I didn't help somebody? That core decency, I still believe exists. If you strip away the nonsense and if you have decent role models, decent public figures, and we have to have people who are decent in public life, because otherwise we're not going to get the boat operators. We're going to get, the villains. We're going to get the mega, hat wearers.
And it could be the same person. It's just how are they? I mean,
I think we cannot end with a better note than that. Let us do that. Let's appeal to our better natures and also put someone in office who we know is not only out for himself solely and would destroy everything in his path to avoid facing his own demons and also appearing like the loser that he is. So anyway, thanks everyone. Thank you, Jen and Brian, for putting up with me. And I'll see you guys next week or maybe this weekend in DC.
It was fun, young grasshopper.
Great job.